Modern UI has become so frustrating. Take ChatGPT for example. You open a chat, you spend an hour brainstorming, and just when you're finally getting somewhere, you ask one more question and suddenly you get hit with this message. The conversation stops not after you finish, not before you started, but exactly when you're most engaged, and it leaves you in this weird state where you can neither continue nor quit because now you're invested. And this kind of frustrating user experience exists in almost every modern app, from Spotify's skip limits to Facebook's account deactivation button buried somewhere deep inside the Earth's crust. It almost feels like modern UI has gone in the exact opposite direction of what a user interface was supposed to be in the first place, and the worst part, it isn't accidental. So this isn't going to be your usual video about dark patterns, because there's something much bigger going on here than a few misleading buttons pretending to do one thing while secretly doing something else. And by the end of this video, you'll realize how modern UI starts manipulating you before you even tap the screen or move your mouse. Remember when icons actually looked like things before they got flattened out of existence? This type of design was everywhere, and it seemed as if these things could actually exist in real life. Even though some of these aged like milk, there was a reason why they looked like that. Early computers were terrifying, not like Skynet ready to wipe out humanity kind of way, but nobody apart from programmers knew how to use them. If you wanted a computer to do anything, you had to type commands into a terminal. Yes, that terminal. The graveyard where many budding Linux users give up their dreams of ever getting freedom from the constant wave of Windows updates and Copilot. The terminal required you to put the right syntax, the correct spelling in the correct order. Miss one letter and the computer stared at you with disappointment similar to a father when his child fails at the school test. Old computers were built by programmers for programmers, and this became a serious problem for Apple when they launched the Macintosh in 1984. They needed more people to use computers, so instead of making people adapt to computers, the idea was to make the computers adapt to people. This is where the concept of graphical user interface came in. Make the interface look like things that existed in real life. So the trash can looked literally like a trash can, the notepad resembled paper, the calculator looked like a calculator. This design came to be known as skeuomorphism. And it worked. People instinctively understood what they were looking at. 2007, every phone came with a keypad. Touchscreens existed, but they needed to be poked with a toothpick to use. Apple, on the other hand, launched a phone with an all-glass touchscreen design that almost looked like alien technology at the time. So in order for it to work, they had to make sure people felt it was familiar, and skeuomorphism became that bridge. The phone app looked like an old receiver, the Notes app looked like yellow notepads, the calendar looked like an actual calendar. iOS wasn't just software, it was translating the physical world into the digital one. The goal wasn't to design the best looking interface, but one that got out of the way and disappeared into the background, which is a sharp contrast to what UI feels like today. And once you see the reality behind how UI works today, it's going to make you even more frustrated. Whenever I open ChatGPT to work on something, this pop-up is the first thing that appears. Now this is interesting, not the message itself, but the reason behind it. It says memory almost full, not full, but almost. The message isn't telling you that something is broken or needs immediate action. It just lays it down in front of you that the memory is about to be filled up, but it's not full yet, and nothing happens. You remove it and continue your work. The conversation continues, life goes on, and the earth keeps revolving around the sun. But the message did its job. It planted a seed in your mind, a tiny amount of anxiety, a sense of urgency that it might hinder your work in the future. Back when Spotify was launched, its free tier was exactly what it claimed to be, free music streaming, but with ads. Nobody loved the ads, but nobody felt psychologically mugged either. The deal was simple: we give you music, you watch our ads. But But that free version of Spotify doesn't exist anymore, and it didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly and painfully, one crappy change at a time. Shuffle got locked, skips got limited, playlists that we created ourselves couldn't be played in order anymore. Ads were deliberately placed after popular songs. Individually, each of these changes seem minor, but together they make the user experience painful. And this was deliberate. The free tier got carefully curated to make it usable enough to keep people around and annoying enough to make them push for premium. Every little change was to make users feel like uninterrupted listening was the most valuable thing. Even their ads are just them telling how annoying the ads are.
Premium. Unlock ad-free music and unlimited skips on any device.
I mean, what kind of meta brain warping stuff is that? The free tier wasn't about giving away stuff, it was about designing an experience where paying felt like liberation. Liberation from the inconveniences that they themselves created. It's like somebody built a prison and put you inside and then sold you the key, which is impressive in the business sense but evil in every other aspect. And that's the whole point. ChatGPT uses anxiety, Spotify uses annoyance. They both attack different emotions to ultimately achieve the same goal, make the free version feel like a problem and make paying seem like the only solution. When the old design language got replaced by the new one, the change wasn't just visual, it was also fundamental. And while the old design was to welcome us in, the new design was to make sure we stayed, and that is where the problems began. If we take a look at modern design language across different platforms, everything more or less looks the same. Flat, minimal, clean and abstract. It's like somebody sucked the life out of all the icons, like they do to employees working in corporate jobs. The leather stitching disappeared, the lined paper disappeared, the wood texture disappeared. When Apple introduced iOS 7 in 2013, their design chief Johnny Ive said that people have become comfortable with touching glass. They don't need physical metaphors anymore. And so the training wheels came off. And to be fair, Apple was right. By 2013, smartphones became mainstream. People have been using glass slabs for over 6 years now. The transition layer that was the old design language had done its job. But here's the part where everything changed. The death of the old skeuomorphic design wasn't just a visual change, it represented something much deeper. Skeuomorphism stood for some very specific purpose. Is this good for the user? Will people understand this? Does this feel comfortable? It was built around trust, around empathy, around making people feel safe in a new and unfamiliar environment. When skeuomorphism died, although these principles stayed, the incentives changed, and with people becoming comfortable now, a new set of priorities slowly took over, and the goal changed from how do we invite people to how do we keep them in. And this is where the relationship changed. Earlier, software had to earn people's trust. It had to explain itself. It had to make people comfortable. But then people were already here. Habits started to form. Nobody needed convincing anymore. They just needed to make sure people kept coming back. And the entire design language started to move forward in that direction. So the frustration we feel while using modern interfaces isn't because designers got incompetent. They got worse because designing them like that became far more rewarding. User interfaces weren't born out of greed, they were born out of rebellion because early computers were hostile and unforgiving, and a generation of designers looked at it and decided to change it. They gave us interfaces that made sense, they gave us software that explained itself, they gave us tools that quietly disappeared into the background. Now I have already made a video where I go in depth about this topic, which you can check out if you're interested. So this design language worked so well that billions of people adopted technology into their lives, got comfortable with clicking, typing, tapping. They got comfortable with a digital life. But the greatest irony is that the very thing UI was supposed to do eventually got abandoned by it.